Hey everyone, Sandra Duran Wilson here, and welcome to Mixed Media Soul Sparks. Every episode I try and give you some new ideas of working with all different materials for your creative process. And I've been discovering how much I like working with unstretched canvas and different fabrics. And I've always loved papers. They're my first love. And so bringing these things together in some new ways and building on how to put them together is kind of what this quick intro is about. I'm going to show you a few ideas and then do a quick demo. But working on, you can just go to the fabric store and buy different weights of canvas fabric. This is, I could work with it dry, and if I work with it dry with paint, it's going to just sit up on the surface, especially on a thicker canvas. Or I can get it wet. I'll just take it into the sink, get it really wet, squeeze it out, and then work on it wet. The way it's going to look different is this was worked on it wet, so you can see the paint has gone all the way through. It's also a lighter weight. This was worked on dry, and the paint is sitting on the surface, hasn't gone through the back. It's a little heavier as well. But I like starting with the black in some ways, and then just layering other paints up. Then I was just taking a brush with gold and going around, just freehand design. Another thing you can do with the canvas is this is just a paste, and I've come in and just put the paste on and really press it down using your knife when you're applying the paste, and just really push it in to the fabric. And then when it's still wet, just kind of come back in and make your own design. Now that that's dry, I can come back in and paint it. This is just cleaning off my extra gesso onto here. Didn't go through the back, so when I paint on this, I'm going to have a very different effect. All of these will give you some great ways to jumpstart another piece. Now let me just show you using a stencil. So this is just a paper cutout. My friend used a Cricut and made this design. So it's not actually a stencil, it's just paper. And I'm going to use a sponge. Let me get my little palette piece over here. Okay, and I'm going to do two different paints. This is a matte acrylic, and it's a more opaque paint. And just a makeup sponge, and just keep rotating it. And then I'm going to pick up a little of this. So what happens when I use this paper, when I pull this off, I'm going to have the stencil effect on the fabric, but I'm also going to have the paper, it's going to be painted. So I can then use that as a collage element. This is not the ideal stencil. You can see how it kind of pulls up in areas, so I'm probably not going to get a perfect stencil effect, but that's not what this is about. This is about the happy effects you get. Let's take a look. We'll go over this side. Nothing like tape and gloves, huh? Here we go. So you can see what a nice image I have from mixing those two colors and the black coming through. So this can either get adhered onto another paper, onto a panel, onto a stretched canvas. I can use it with a gel to glue it down, put it in a book, and then I also have this piece, which I could still use as like a stencil once it's dry, but I could just paint it and use that as a collage element as well. It's kind of how this was created, but this is on paper. Now, I'll show you a piece here that I did using an interference blue paint with a stencil. It was a tree stencil. And then I took the stencil off and I just used the paint on a brush to connect the areas of the stencil so that it reads as one piece. And this is just a canvas I had left over. This is from another episode where I'm using fusible web, which is, it's this stuff, and it comes on a paper backing. So there's a whole video on just that, and that's how I created this. I actually adhered it to the canvas. And now I'm going to, off camera, I'll finish this one and show you the finished piece. I have added a little other color here to start to tie that in. Another idea that I used with the fusible web is to use it to adhere pieces together. This is a very thin paper, very old manuscript journal, and ribbon, and then some other painted paper. And I just put fusible web behind this and then heated it with an iron, and that makes it stay. So this is one of the covers for a book I was starting, but I like these because I can cut this up and then adhere it to another piece of paper or panel and have a finished piece. This is an unusual fabric that I used in one of my books. It's very absorbent, and I like how it took the paint and I was able to move the paint around on plastic and then put it onto the fabric, and the paint went into the fabric. So I'm going to be working on a class of using fabrics and printmaking and all kinds of ideas. So look for that in the future. We'll be doing some things like that. And just some more pieces. Burlap. You can paint on the burlap. And here's another piece of the canvas. I could take and stitch these pieces together, or I could use the fusible web to iron them together. I think stitching on the burlap would work better. This is what the product is called. It's a Pellon Heavy Duty Wonder Under, and you get it at the fabric store. Now, if you're going to heat something and iron it together, which we'll just take a minute to do that. So let me get my iron set up. Okay, I think my iron's about hot enough. This is a cooking parchment paper that I'm using. So it's very important to put your pieces that you're going to fuse in between this cooking parchment paper. I'm also going to put just an old towel down here to protect the surface. And what I've got here is just, this is unpainted, the paper, and then what this is this is the fusible web, which I painted and while it was on the backing paper, and then when it was dry, I peeled it off. So I'm going to use that not only to adhere the paper to the fabric, but also to add color to it. About 5 seconds in each area. I'm applying pressure as well. Let's just check it. So now you can see that that has fused the paper onto the fabric, and I do have the benefit of the color under that. Now another way to do it is using, where'd it go? Here it is. Now this one, the fabric is painted, and so is the paper. But this is not. So this is what the fusible web looks like. I've taken it off the backing paper, no paint on it. And now I'm going to set this up here and move this over a bit. Okay. There's something under there which is dimensional, so the iron doesn't want to go over it. Let's see if that's enough. I think I could use a little more right down here. Now the fusible webbing doesn't go clear, stays a little opaque. So if you wanted to do this, you could paint it as well. But now you can see that that's another way to get the paper onto the fabric without using, a gel or changing the way the paper looks. So I really love this idea of working with painting on fabric, and I will finish a few pieces, and again, look at that, isn't that beautiful? So these are all elements, or they could become part of a bigger piece. So have fun with painting on fabric, and see you next time. Join the Creative Awakening community on Facebook, where you'll be able to post your art, connect with other creatives around the world, and ask questions. Use the hashtag #MixedMediaSoulSparks when posting your work on social media. Thanks for joining me.